Do you wonder about past lives? Have you ever thought about where your soul has been, where it's going, or what lessons and memories have been gathered along the way? In this podcast, we will discuss past life memories, psychic phenomena, energy healing, and other metaphysical topics with experts and the average person to find out how we can heal through these experiences. So I invite you to join me on my journey. Welcome to the Regression Session. And then it's like oh my God, I can't even talk right now. Welcome back to the Regression Session. My name is Ian. Welcome to the Regression Session for all the new people. Thanks for tuning in. We love you. This week, I had a slight compression issue with my microphone a couple minutes into my interview. So if you hear a weird audio switch over, that's because my computer messed up my audio once again, like a good friend. Just kidding. It's kind of an asshole. Anyway, this week, we're going to be hearing from Ellenmorris Tiegerman. Once again, if you have not listened to episode 11, which was the first time Ellenmorris came on to my show, definitely head back over to episode 11 after this episode. In this episode, Ellenmorris and I talk about how our understandings of the concept of reincarnation have kind of shifted since the last time that we have talked. And I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys. I think that it's very enlightening, and I hope that you guys get a lot out of it. Before we get into today's episode, a couple of things. Make sure that you subscribe to the show in your podcast player so that you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. I upload every single Sunday at 8 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and I don't want any of you guys to miss an episode. Also, I'm trying to grow the show. I'm trying to get out there. A couple of things that you guys can do to help me take action and get the word out is to share the show with one or two of your good buddies who you think might be interested, or maybe even on the cusp of being interested. That would really help me out to get out there a little bit more, as well as giving me a great review and a high rating in your podcast player. Thank you to everybody who has already gone in and left me a review and left me a high rating. I really, really appreciate it. It makes me feel great to read all those reviews, so thank you very much. Head on over to my social medias, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, whatever floats your boat. I try to stay active on all of them. If you want more Ian in your life, that's the place to get it. If you want to come on to the podcast and share your past life story or your knowledge on any metaphysical topic, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com. And now, finally, into the episode with Ellenmorris. Ellenmorris, it's great to have you back on my show. We've been trying to get this going for a while now, to have you back.
Yes, we have.
So thank you for coming back on the show. For those of you listening who don't know Ellenmorris Tiegerman, check out episode 11 of my podcast. That's where she first made the Regression Session debut. And Ellenmorris, when you came on my show, I think it was just called the Regression Session.
Yes.
I don't think that I had any subtitles. Now I have subtitle, and the way that the subtitle progressed was it was just the Regression Session, and then it was a guide to past lives and the metaphysical. And since then, I've changed it again. The final change, because it's kind of morphed into this thing of it's time to heal versus it's time to prove it. Because when I first talked to you, I was all about proving past lives exist, and we've got to do regressions and get hard facts. We need to get street names, we need to get addresses, we need to get verifiable data. Now my podcast is called Exploring Healing Through Past Lives and the Metaphysical. And the reason that is because my concept of this work has kind of morphed over the time I've been doing this. I've changed from wanting to prove it, wanting to get those verifiable details, to making it all about the healing. Because to me, it doesn't really matter when I'm doing a past life regression whether or not it's quote unquote real, right? Because it's a real experience. It's right. All about how can Ellenmorris or Ian or whoever feel more complete afterwards. And if we get verifiable details, even better, because I have got those details before and it was amazing. But once you kind of get those, it turns into let's heal. Let's fix your trauma. Let's fix your carried over emotions. So my question to you to start would be to ask you, how has your perception of reincarnation changed since the last time we spoke?
Well, I have always believed in the process, and I agree with you that it's really not necessary to, quote unquote, prove your experience and validate whether the facts involved are real or not. They can be real to you. They're your experiences. I agree with you. They're your images. They're your flashbacks and perceptions. So my thinking about that process, the engagement, the past life hypnosis, that hasn't changed. What's changed for me is what has occurred on my website. So I have a website related to a book that I wrote. I wrote a book called Tenure Denied, which describes some biographical experiences that I had as a college professor at Adelphi University back in 1985 for about 15 or 16 years that I was at the university and I was teaching there. Okay. The clock moves forward and I have, a series of past life triggers, and I take a seminar course with Dr. Brian Weiss at the Rhinebeck Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. And things begin to trigger in my mind about the experiences that I had. And I decided that I would go back and rewrite that book, which was originally a murder mystery. Okay. And I was going to rewrite it in terms of past life regression therapy. Okay. So the main character, just so that you understand what I'm trying to explain here, the main character, like myself, is a college professor, and she has a series of triggered experiences, and she meets Dr. Brian Weiss, okay? And she has a past life experience, and she is challenged with a murder on campus, okay? So that's the theme of the book. But what changed is that associated with the book was a website, okay? And on the website, I got in touch with people in the world of past life regression, like yourself, Ian, okay? And I asked them to write about their experiences and write about their thoughts and feelings about past life theory, past life regression, what happens to souls when people die, what happens in the in-between time. So my thinking about that process was that there was a great deal of consensus in the field, okay, amongst experts, okay, all over the country. And what I realized over the past months is that there was no consensus. There was a tremendous amount of diversity in opinions, and people had incredibly different perspectives on reincarnation and what happens in that death experience, and whether people come back and how they come back. I was stunned, fascinated, and stunned. So what's changed for me is not the process itself, but the diversity in thinking in terms of people's perspectives and their opinions about the process. And they've been writing about it on my website. And the website is www.thedeniedseries.com. Okay. And people can go to the website and they can see what you wrote, what Wendy Rose Williams wrote, what other people wrote, Janice Cohen, what I wrote. And you can see what the differing opinions are about reincarnation and past life regression. And it is so interesting. That's my point. It is fascinating.
There are so many different perspectives. You have the people kind of like Brian Weiss, who kind of believe that there's this linear process, right? He calls them the masters. Okay. He goes through, when you die, you go through this little process, and then you meet the masters, and then the masters tell you all about your life. They tell you what your purpose is, or whatever, what lessons you're supposed to learn, blah, blah, blah. You can read Brian Weiss's book. He'll go over it. I'm not a huge fan of that book because, it's a great introductory place to get into this kind of stuff. I'm not a huge fan of any of those books because the reason, and let me explain why. The reason is because it kind of creates little cult followings, right? Just because Brian Weiss had this experience doesn't necessarily mean that's the whole picture. And the whole picture, like you said, does not have a consensus. And the reason is because everybody has such wildly different experiences. Right?
Yes.
Reincarnation for me is kind of like 20 steps back. Just like the understanding of, okay, maybe this is a thing. That was like way long ago. I have now moved into like quantum healing because it's just such a, I don't know. It's weird to talk about. Okay. It makes me feel like a crazy person because I remember like a year and a half ago, I was like, maybe reincarnation is real. Maybe we could come back. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I thought that. So it's just kind of weird. So how far down the rabbit hole are you willing to go, like, and actually feasibly believe it?
I do believe it. I believe that there's enough diversity in thinking, and there are enough people who have had shared experiences that we can at least agree at the outset that we're talking about a quote unquote real experience. Okay. I think the issue is, where are we at this particular point? And we are at a point in time where, like Brian Weiss, we are introducing ideas about reincarnation. We are sharing our narratives and our stories about reincarnation. And we need to collect those stories because the more people that talk about it, the more we're able to bring it into the mainstream. That's my chief complaint. My complaint is that we're not talking about it enough. And it remains to be on the outskirts, on the edge of wacky. Okay, like wacky. All right,
Yeah.
we're not wacky. We really should be brought into the mainstream, and we need to talk about our personal experiences and the experiences that other people have had. Because I think the general public at this point is willing to listen. I'm not saying that they're willing to agree, but I do think they're willing to listen. Okay. So I think we're at a crucial point. I think, Ian, you're doing a wonderful job on your show, and you need to keep doing it, because this is how we get the word out. And this is how we get people to talk about their experiences. Once you start talking about your experience, other people will say, you know what? I had something similar to that. I had this, I had that. And that's important, because I think we need to support each other, and we need to hear that there's a lot more of this so people can come out of the closet, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and that's kind of why, if there's anything that I do like Brian Weiss for, it's for bringing it to the mainstream, because he went on Oprah. He was like the first one to kind of popularize it, and that's why Brian Weiss is so popular, especially in the communities online. They're like, oh, you got to check out Brian Weiss. It's because he was the first one to explode with that because of Oprah. And when we're looking at this issue that you're talking about of, we need to talk about it. There is conversation going on. There's a lot of conversation going on, but not as much as there could be. And there's kind of maybe four different camps. You've got the no, that's not real camp. That's like, I'll just bring up a big name, Bill Nye the Science Guy, right? He's like, no, there's absolutely no evidence. Evidence proves that reincarnation is not real, and then we just disappear. And then you've got the people who are kind of like, maybe this is real. Maybe we come back once or twice or whatever. And we go along this cycle of like a circle. We live a life, we face challenges, we die, we go through a life review, we talk to the elders or whatever, and then we get reincarnated. And then you've got people like me that are like, oh, when you die, you shift into a different reality, and you're in a different universe, and you can do whatever you want. And so there's all these different places, and because they're all on different points in the timeline, I don't know if there ever will be a consensus fully unless we can actually prove something. But the only thing we can prove is, what's the word I'm looking for? I totally can't even think of the word. All of the evidence is, I just can't think of the word, Ellenmorris.
Okay, so there is let me just suggest this. There are some cases, for example, Soul Survivor is a book that was written about a child who was a pilot in World War II, and he came back, and he basically was as a 3 or 4 year old. Okay, he had a whole set of memory experiences. He was able to draw pictures and reference, as young as he was, his experiences during his flights as a pilot over, in World War II, and how his plane crashed. Okay, all I'm saying is there are some cases where, past life experiences have been substantiated. You may say, well, there's not enough information there, but there is some information. All I'm saying, Ian, is that it's a beginning. Okay, we're at the beginning of a long process here. We've basically been in the dark ages about this issue. Let's also consider that we're coming from a Western culture. We're not in an Eastern religion, where the whole dynamic about reincarnation is built into Indian culture. Okay, it's not that's not who we are here as Christians and Jews. We don't talk about reincarnation as Christians and Jews. We talk about religion, we talk about souls, and then we stop. Okay, so we need to explore what the relationship is between reincarnation as a process and our religious beliefs. Are those two things? Okay, are they possible? Can they coexist? Can Christianity and reincarnation coexist? Can Judaism and reincarnation coexist? We need to question our religious beliefs and see if there's any room here for those things to live together and work together so that we have a reincarnation process that's part of our religious faith in Western cultures. In Eastern cultures, perfectly acceptable. But here in the West, it's a little more difficult to get past, I live, I die, I go to heaven. That's it.
The word I was looking for is anecdotal.
Okay.
The evidence is anecdotal, and because everybody could throw, oh well that's you already learned about that, and it's cryptomnesia or whatever. So as far as like the religion side goes, and man, I don't necessarily want to like shit on religion, but I'm gonna do it anyway. With Christianity, I don't know if there ever will be room for the reincarnation belief to coexist. And the reason is because the whole system is built on control. Okay. The reincarnation thing is the total complete opposite on a fundamental level than Christianity, because when you die in Christianity, you are held accountable by an outside force, right? Like you don't have the power. You are at the mercy of a vengeful God that gets to decide whether or not, on arbitrary feelings or rules that are different all over the world, you get to live in paradise or be burned for eternity. With reincarnation, you are responsible for your actions. You are the one judging yourself. You're the one that's holding yourself accountable. For example, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody like, I don't know, I'll just throw out a random example like, oh, I had a life where I murdered someone, so I had to go back to another life where I got murdered because I needed to right that wrong, or I want to experience what I did to that person that I murdered because it wasn't right. Nobody told them that that's what was going to happen, but they decided it for themselves. And that's like the reason I don't think they can coexist is because on a fundamental level, reincarnation is about self accountability and religion is about accountability to a vengeful God. What do you think about that?
Well, it's definitely harsh. I will tell you that, Ian. I think that, religion changes over time. It evolves. Ideas change over time. They evolve. And I think there's room here. I really do. I think there's room for a partnership. And I think there's room for a coexistence. I do think that it's a difficult process because I will agree with you that there are a lot of routines that we have and religious edicts that make it difficult. Okay, because if your perception is you live, you die, and you go to heaven with a white picket fence, and you're there, then you're never going to get around to a karma process. You're never going to get around to a reincarnation process. But I do think it's possible to come into your religious faith and hold on to the majority of the principles in your religion that make it special, and open yourself up to the opportunity and the possibility that you are going to return to have a better life, and you are going to return to be a higher spiritual being. I think that's possible.
I don't know. I don't know if I can agree with you on that, though.
Okay.
Respectfully.
Okay.
Just because of the whole, it's the control thing for me,
I understand.
And it's like all of this is like mental exercises, right? Does it change the price of eggs that we are reborn into a body, or whether or not we die and go to heaven or hell? You know what I mean? It's like all mental exercises, because in the end, for me, I'm never going to go to a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim and say, "Hey, buddy, you're wrong." So I don't know. It's all kind of like interesting mental exercises for me anyway.
I think what's important, and I'm just speaking about myself, that when I look forward, okay, what I'm looking forward to is the possibility and the belief that there's a continuation of the soul, and that the soul is eternal, and that there's a process that we go through over time. I think that concept is something that has to fit within my religion. And I think I've made it fit. Okay, so I'm comfortable with it from a religious point of view, and I'm comfortable with it from a reincarnation point of view. But I think it involves, I agree with you, Ian, I think it involves a great deal of introspection. And I think you've got to come to terms with the limits of your religion and the limits of your life, and what you hope the process is all about going forward. I mean, obviously, we're here now, and it's not like we can, evolve ourselves 200 years forward and say, with some clarity, well, this is really, where I'm headed, and, I can be sure of this, and here's my data, here's all my information. We don't have that. There's still an aspect of faith, and there's still an aspect of believability here that's built in to where we're at this point. Now, there may come some time in the future, Ian, where, we have enough data or better technology that we're really able to see into the innermost corners of the mind and find aspects of the mind that we're not, we haven't uncovered as of yet. That's a possibility too. But for now, I think we have the process to rely on and experience.
Yeah, and like you said something there, it's about introspection, right? Looking inside yourself. And that's what I always encourage people to do. I've had people reach out to me and say, I'm kind of lost here. I don't know what to believe anymore. And really my best recommendation for anybody that's feeling that way, if you're listening to this and you're feeling, I just don't know what to believe, I don't know who to believe, the one person that you can believe is yourself. So, it takes an incredible amount of courage and it takes an incredible amount of willpower to question your belief system, especially if you were raised in it, the dogmatic religion. If you were raised in that, it takes a huge amount of courage and bravery to question those beliefs. And once you do, just look inside yourself and see, what do I believe? What is it that I feel is right? And when you can not even necessarily definitively say that, I believe this, I kind of feel like X and X and X is wrong, and I don't identify with that. You are not beholden to anybody but yourself. So that's my piece of advice for anybody listening. If you're kind of in this boat, because even I, doing this show, I'm not even sure what I believe. Honestly, I'm kind of, there's so many different people I've talked to, so many different beliefs that have come across my plate. The only thing I can rely on is what I've experienced,
Right. And I think more than anything else, Ian, is to tell people and share with people, have an open mind. Don't be definitive and definite about anything other than the fact that you have an opportunity to experience different thoughts, different experiences, and the possibility of reincarnation. Read. I mean, whether it's Brian Weiss or Ian Stevenson or whoever it is, okay? Have an open mind. Read as much as you possibly can and do some exercises with yourself, for goodness sake. Do some dream therapy. Journal your experiences. See if you have any trigger experiences. See what your images are. Meditate. Get a book on meditation and do some meditation. It doesn't have to be 6 hours every single day, but you can do it 2 or 3 times a week for 15, maybe 20 minutes. Start a process. Do something different. Don't stay stuck in your head. Don't stay stuck in your life. Try something different. Open yourself up.
Hey everyone, I'm interrupting the episode to tell you all about my Patreon campaign. I love doing this podcast, and it is amazing to hear from people telling me how much they love it too. It takes a ton of time and effort to keep producing content every single week for you guys, and I would love to put out even more for everyone to enjoy. By subscribing to a tier in my Patreon campaign, you can help support the show, provide more episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and just extra content in general. So if you enjoy the show and you feel it's worth your time listening and would like to contribute, you can go to patreon.com/The Regression Session. There's also a link in the description. Thanks so much for the support. I could never do this show without each and every one of you. Now back to the episode.
What trying something different does too is it changes your energy too. Because if you keep doing the same thing and having the same thoughts, your energy is getting into like a rut almost. And it's going to take the path of least resistance. But if you start doing something different, it's going to change your energy. And when you change your energy, you open yourself up to new possibilities.
Yes. And I think, it's kind of interesting. My initial experience was with Brian Weiss. Okay, so I took this week-long seminar for therapists because I was a therapist. So I went to the Rhinebeck Center. I got my pillows and sheets. I set up my room, and I started taking seminars from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I listened to different speakers, to lecturers. I saw regression therapy. I was there for a solid week. It was intense. But it was a new experience. I had never done anything like that before. It was mind-blowing. It was something different. And that's my point. Look for something different to do. Whether it's reading a book, going for a seminar. He offers seminars all over the country. You don't have to go for a week. You could go for a half a day. You could go for a couple of hours. But it's worth the risk. You're taking a risk with your life, for goodness sake. You're worth the risk. You're worth it. Do it. Capitalize, invest in yourself. Do something different. Don't get stuck. Ian is right. Don't get stuck in your head. Do something different.
Yeah. I mean, that sums it up very well. Taking a risk, like, as far as your belief systems go, there's nothing that drives me more crazy, Ellenmorris, than someone who is not willing to question their own beliefs. Okay. It's so frustrating to me when someone opens up a conversation, whenever somebody opens up a conversation like this, of this nature with me, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, that's not how it is. I know the truth and you're wrong. It's like, how do you know? Huh? How do you know? So there's nothing that frustrates me more than someone who's not willing to question their own beliefs. And if you're not to that point, that's okay. I don't hate you, I promise. But, like I said, it takes so much courage to question your own belief systems. And, with your experience, when we first talked, you were telling me that this just kind of happened to you. This like fell in your lap, when you were in Greece and you went through those ruins, and all of a sudden you just started knowing where everything was and what it was about, the colors that used to be there, and that just kind of fell in your lap. So what I would like to know from you is, real quick, kind of shifting the subject very suddenly, is what do you think that was? When we didn't get a chance to really talk about it because I wasn't really thinking along this same line of thinking back then. But what do you think that was? What do you think happened to you all those years ago?
I think that we all have an opportunity to have these triggered experiences, that we have deja vu sensations, that we've been someplace before, or we recognize someone. I had that experience with my husband, as a case in point. When I first met him, I was thunderstruck, because my sense of him was that I knew him. And it was a very overwhelming feeling that I had met him before, and I knew who he was, and I was really attracted and connected to him. Okay, I'm sure everybody has had a similar kind of experience. Well, this was an experience when I was traveling as a teenager in Crete, and I was at these archaeological ruins, and something just clicked in my head, and I heard like a voice say to me, "We've been here before. We were here." And I was like stunned, right? And then I was shocked and very, very uncomfortable. So I did what I typically did, was to sit down, just stop. I just stopped. I sat down. I calmed myself down. And then I started to look around very, very carefully. And I was on a tour. The tour continued. I got up. I was by myself. And I stood at the edge of the ruins. And I projected forward. And I said, what was here? That was my question to myself. What was here? And as I scanned the site, okay, I had the sensation, because remember, this is all at a perceptual, affective level now, okay, that sensation that I knew where everything was. I knew that, this was a greeting room, this was sleeping quarters, this was, there was a bath here. So I knew where everything was. And as I moved forward, I had a stronger confirmation as I moved from room to room that I was correct about my projections. Okay. So that triggered experience I stuffed because I didn't know what to do with it as a teenager. And I was very concerned about getting a negative reaction from family. So I approached my parents when I went home, and I asked them about what their feeling was about, memories like this. And they poo-pooed me very, very quickly and said, that's, all ridiculous nonsense. All those sensations are not real. And you really shouldn't talk about things like that because people are going to see you as weird. So given all of that negative feedback, I just left it, stuffed it in a closet. And I didn't do anything with it, Ian, for a very, very long time because I was very concerned about other people's reactions. Okay. And then I took that course with Brian Weiss many years later. And I was flabbergasted, okay, because other people in the group were talking about their experiences, their triggered experiences, their sleep experiences, their dreams, their images, their perceptions. And I said, welcome home, Ellenmorris.
Yeah, Michael Newton called those memory triggers. And it could be anything from like a necklace glinting in the sunlight to someone's smile that it just like triggers a little, like a memory you can't quite, a memory on the tip of your tongue. Sorry, my wife and son are talking right now. My son's trying to come in here.
Very cute. Very, very cute.
It is cute, but it makes for bad audio. That's the problem. But anyway, Michael Newton called those memory triggers. And I do think that they're really common. I personally, I had one time, very, very powerful. And it's like, the way I would describe it is it's, if you've ever had a word on the tip of your tongue, but you just can't quite remember the word, but you know what you're trying to say, you know what the word means, but you can't remember the word. I literally just had that in this episode when I was trying to remember the word anecdotal, but it's like that, but with like a memory. It's like you see someone, you're like, I swear, I know that guy. Where have I seen that guy before or whatever? It's like I think I've been here before, but I've never been here. It's these weird things. And yeah, Michael Newton called those memory triggers in his book Journey of Souls. It's very, very interesting concept. And yeah, I think that's what happened. You had one of those memory triggers.
But what's important? What's important there is understanding that the experience not only triggers a set of memories, but also triggers something in today's life. That's what's really important. It doesn't matter. I don't have to go back and prove anything. That was my experience. It's my personal experience. No one can take that away from me. No one can say to me, no, Ellenmorris, you didn't have that experience. I did have that experience, and it was very real. That's my experience. Okay. But what's important about that experience is that it uncovers something from the past that will help in the present life. And that's what you were referring to before. And that's what Brian Weiss talks about in terms of regression therapy, that you have some trauma in today's life. You have a life experience, okay, that brings up some aspect of emotional challenge, emotional trauma. And you can go back to a triggered experience that helps you work through your present life challenge. And that's how past lives, past experiences can be very helpful to you in terms of the healing process that you were talking about when we first started our session. And that's what I think you should talk about, Ian, because that's so important.
It's all about integrating it, once it's like this. I've used this example a couple of times. It's like once you've tasted an orange, you can never untaste an orange. You're going to know what that orange tastes like forever, unless of course something crazy happens, like you get a brain injury or something, but that's stupid rare. And it's the same exact kind of a thing. Once these trigger events happen, there's really no going back. You can try, but it's always going to be tugging in the back of your mind, like, okay, what in the hell was that? If you don't look at it. And you brought up the whole trauma thing. That is huge for me. You can call, people have a big misconception about what trauma actually is. And I heard this recently. You can call it trauma with a big T or trauma with a little t. Trauma with a big T is like, oh, you were assaulted as a child, got in a car accident, whatever. But, trauma with a little t is maybe like one day you dropped a plate and your parents were having a bad day and they yelled at you for it. And then that just kind of stuck with you. Or, maybe you got called fat in school. That's still trauma. It doesn't have to be huge. And these trauma, what these memory triggers can do sometimes is the reason that people have these, past life recalls when they experience similar situations is because it's like carried over, right? That's my theory about it anyway, because I can't say it's proven, but that's my experience, is it's carried over. And that's why you have these like almost flashbacks where you're like, this has happened to me before. This has happened to me before. And what it's about is about integrating the experience and making it a part of yourself. Instead of just tasting the orange, you got to eat it. If that makes sense.
Right. You've got to figure out in that triggered experience, in that memory, right, what's meaningful to you and how you can best use that to help you through this life. And it's a tool. That's the point. It's a tool here. Okay. And you should look at it as a tool, something that's useful, something that you have in your box, in your toolbox, that when you're having a difficult day or you're faced with a difficult challenge, you can go to your toolbox and pull something out that will pull you out of your depression, to help pull you out of, your negative thoughts, your negative experiences. It's a tool, and it's meant to help you.
It's all about progressing, constant progress. There's some people out there that think that we only come into this life. Actually, let me ask you this instead of just saying what a lot of people think. Let me ask you, Ellenmorris, what do you think the purpose of living life is? And then I'll tell you what I think it is.
That's a really good question. I think for myself, it is spiritual healing and spiritual enlightenment. And I think what one of the things that I do is I pray every morning. Okay, so I say a set of prayers in the morning to clear my head and set my day. And one of the things that I look for in myself is my personal transition. Am I becoming a more loving, kinder, gentler person? So I will evaluate at the end of the day, okay, when I go to bed, I will meditate for a little while before I go to sleep, and I will look through my day and look at my experiences and evaluate them in my head, okay, and make a determination about whether or not I've been kind to someone that I've had an interaction with. And if I feel that I have not, okay, then I want to acknowledge what I've done. I want to change my behavior. I want to make amends. Okay, so I think about that process going forward the next time I have an interaction with that person. Okay, so that's at night. In the morning, as I said, I get up in the morning, and my prayer in the morning has to do with being a more loving, kinder, gentler person over the course of the day. So it's about improvement. It's about self-growth. It's about spirituality and making connections. Because remember what I said, because we've been on almost an hour, what I said at the very beginning, the most valuable part of me, of my experience, has been the connections that I made to people. What impact have I had on people's lives? What have I done for other people? How am I connected to other people?
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it, because there's some people out there, like these poor people that have experienced like horrible traumas in their lives. There's some people out there that think that we come to this life to suffer, and that's why we're here. It's just to experience pain, and that's the only thing that we're here to get. All the other stuff is just fluff. I mean, I totally can see the self-improvement aspect of it. You know, it's about personal progression, personal growth. But at the same time, I also kind of think it's just about experiencing in general. You know, I kind of look at everybody as like a fragment of, I don't like the word God, but I will call it the core. Some people call it like the great central sun, which is kind of weird for me. I'll call it like the core. We're all fragments in my mind of the same thing. We all have the same life energy kind of flowing through us. And it's all about getting experiences. If you're familiar with Dolores Cannon, she, in her work, came across a phenomenon where people have, like various people across the planet, claimed in her sessions that they had to experience everything on this planet before they could even become a human. So they had to experience what it was like to be a rock or a mountain or a tree or whatever. And then they could be bugs. And then they could be, I don't know, like a dog or a fish or whatever. And then they slowly moved up the ladder of, okay, I need more experiences until they can finally come into the complex existence of a human. And I kind of agree with that. That kind of speaks to me personally. So for me, it's about experience and like collecting experiences just in general. But why not self-improve while you're here? Why not become the best possible version of yourself that you can be?
I agree with you 100%, but I think it goes back to, the issue of introspection and having an open mind and understanding that this is a journey, okay? It's a journey, it's a process, and it's taking baby steps, and it's growing step by step, and it's having self-compassion and understanding that you are going to make mistakes, but you are also going to show tremendous change. And that's very positive. And you need to, where we started this entire session, you need to show some self-love about the process.
Yep. That's the hardest thing, I think, for a lot of people, is showing yourself compassion. We are our harshest critic. You know, if you make a mistake, Ellenmorris, and then you see someone else make the same mistake, who are you going to be harder on?
Yourself. You're going to be harder on yourself.
Exactly. You're gonna be like, man, I'm so worthless for doing that. But if someone else does it, you're like, oh, you know, they probably just had a bad day today. You know, they didn't mean that, or whatever. My challenge, kind of wrapping up this episode a little bit, is to challenge people to be as nice to yourself as you are to other people. Ellenmorris, I asked you this question when we first got on the call. What are 3 things you love about yourself? Because we talk about what we love about everyone else all the time. So my challenge, wrapping up the episode here, is to find 3 things about yourself that you love. And feel free to email them to me. Feel free to comment in my Facebook group or my subreddit or wherever. I want to know, what are 3 things that people love about themselves? And wrapping up, Ellenmorris, let's go over your website, your book, Tenure Denied. You know, let's where can people get in touch with you? Where can people read your book, get your book, read your blog? Let's go over all your socials. What do you got going on?
Okay, so the book is called Tenure Denied, and my last name is Tiegerman. Okay, you can get me, you can find me on Amazon. The book is on Amazon. You can get it there. And my website, if you'd like to read about reincarnation and you'd like to read about different people like Ian, okay, who are advocates and spokespeople for the field. The website is www.thedeniedseries.com. And you can come to the website, send me an email. If you have a question for me, send me an email. I'll be happy to answer you.
Links to that are going to be in the description. Definitely check those out. Get the book, Tenure Denied. It's a very interesting read. I have it myself, and it's very, very interesting. It's well done, Ellenmorris, and I appreciate you actually sending me that book, so thank you very much. And before we kind of wrap up here, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, do you have a message you'd like to leave for the audience?
Absolutely. My message is, be patient with yourself. You're a changing, evolving spiritual being, and you will find that you will make tremendous progress. And in the process, you'll find who you really are.
Well, thank you so much for coming back on my show, Ellenmorris. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode. I would like to thank Ellenmorris once again for coming on to my show. And I would also like to thank you for tuning in. Definitely go check out the Denied series. Head on over to Ellenmorris's website. Also, go follow me on whatever social media floats your boat. I would love to interact with every single one of you. Once again, if you all could share the podcast around, that would really help me out. Give me a high rating, a great review, all that good stuff. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player as well so that you don't miss a single episode, because I got a lot coming your way. If you want to come onto the podcast to share your past life story or your knowledge on any metaphysical topic, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.
Tell her not to wake up now. They be sleeping on this way too long. Time for them to take a bow. Soon enough they sing a different song. Change will not be easy, it's a necessity. You don't see what we see, you're your own enemy. So you gotta wake up now. You've been sleeping for too long, you gotta wake up, yeah, 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 yeah. Soon there will no longer be pollution. Shining by the light of the diamonds, there will be a different horizon. One day we will all come to Zion, strong as a lion. We can be silenced. No, there's a busy answer to all of this. Even in a hateful heart it exists. Why can't we just all get along now? It's been too long, yeah. We gotta reunite, yeah. Put a man with a gun, you gotta know what goes around comes back around. Asking for forgiveness is the new sun. We'll never forget, but silence is loud. Yeah. For the man who runs, the one you want the best, I bet I will be proud. Gotta pay a higher price, no discount. We only have love, going to be mine. Yeah. Tell her not to wake up now. They be sleeping on this way too long. Time for them to take a bow. Soon enough they sing a different song. Change will not be easy, it's a necessity. You don't see what we see, you're your own enemy. So you gotta wake up now. You've been sleeping for too long, you gotta wake up, yeah, yeah,
It's like pulling teeth to get you guys to come over and interact with me. It really is. It's like, am I your dentist?